There are moments that split life into before and after. Mine happened on a Thursday in January, when I opened the door and came face to face with Mateus. 2 years older, sun-tanned, with those piercing green eyes and the shutter tattoo on his arm. The same magnetic presence as always. He was there, unannounced, after 2 years of silence. "My name is Raphael, I'm 24. In that moment my stomach flipped, not from fear, from recognition, of something you bury so deep you pretend it never existed. "I came to collect what you owe me, Raphael." His voice was deep and steady, but there was something else underneath. Anger? Hurt? Or maybe a mixture of both. "I don't owe you anything, Mateus." That was a lie. A complete lie. And he knew it. You could see it in his eyes, that intense green that seemed to see through all the layers I'd built over the last 3 years. "Don't you? You promised you'd keep in touch. Said we'd talk. That distance wouldn't change anything. And what did you do? You disappeared. 2 years, Raphael. 2 years without a message, without a call, without anything. I felt the same heat from 3 years ago at our parents' wedding dinner, that electric moment, that electric pull, that forbidden attraction. Mateus walked straight in without being invited, like he owned the place. My minimalist apartment suddenly felt small. He scanned the living room with a critical eye. "Nice place. A bit sparse, but it suits you. Very minimalist. What do you want, Mateus?" He turned. For the first time, I saw something beyond anger. I saw hurt and abandonment. "I want to understand why. Why you cut me out of your life as if I meant nothing. As if that dinner never happened. As if you hadn't felt what I felt." My heart raced. It couldn't be that he was talking about that. About that moment. That look. That feeling that the world had stopped and it was only the two of us, even with my father and his mother there, chatting about the honeymoon, oblivious to the storm that was starting between their children. "I don't know what you're talking about." Another lie. An even worse one. Mateus laughed, a bitter, sharp sound like he'd known exactly what I'd say, and it still gutted him to hear it. "You do know. You've always known. The difference is I had the guts to leave. To run thousands of miles away because staying would have meant facing what we both felt. And you? You stayed here. In your safe little life. Ignoring. Pretending it didn't exist." He stepped closer. So close I could smell him. A scent that made me remember everything I wanted to forget. "You owe me honesty, Raphael. You owe me the truth. And I'm not leaving until I get it." I should have told him to leave, but I didn't. I'd spent 2 years relieved by the distance, and now he was back, and I had nowhere to run. "You can't stay here." My voice came out weak, unconvincing. "I can. I'm staying until you stop lying, to me and to yourself." He dropped his backpack on the floor beside the sofa, as if marking territory, as if he'd already decided this wasn't a visit, it was an invasion. "Mateus, this is ridiculous. You can't just show up out of nowhere and what? Demand the truth? You know what's ridiculous? Spending 2 years trying to erase you from my mind, telling myself I made it all up. That's ridiculous. And coming back to find you just living your life like I never mattered. That's ridiculous too." The silence pressed down between us. "I didn't ask for this, Mateus." "Didn't ask for what? For me to come back? Or for me to drag everything back up that you've been burying? Both things. But admitting that would open a door I had locked and thrown the key away." He stepped out onto the balcony. The hot January air rushed in. "You know what I realized." He stared out at the city, back still turned. "You only promised to stay in touch because it was easy. And when I left the country, you were relieved. Problem gone. Distance solved everything." Each word hit like a punch. That's not true. Another lie. But this one cracked in my throat. He heard it break. Mateus turned, staring at me through the glass. The sun lit his face, and I felt as if the last 3 years had vanished. As if we were still at that dinner. "Then explain it to me. I need to know if I was the only one lying awake that night after dinner, trying to figure out how to deal with wanting someone I shouldn't want." My breath faltered. He had said what I didn't have the courage to think. He came back inside and shut the door, looking at me intensely. "You'll figure out what you owe me soon, Raphael. Very soon." There was no threat in his voice. The threat was in his eyes, like he could see right through every wall I'd built, like I had nothing left to hide from him. "I'm not leaving until I get the answers I came for." "And what exactly are you here for?" He smiled then, but it was nothing like a real smile. It was the expression of someone who'd lost something crucial and was determined to take it back, no matter what. The truth. All of it. The things you feel. The things I feel. Everything we've been too scared to say out loud. Mateus checked the hallway and came back. "You got a spare mattress? Or am I sleeping on the couch?" "You're not staying here." "Yes, I am. Unless you physically throw me out, and we both know you won't." He was right. God, he was right. "There's a mattress in the hall closet." He nodded, looking almost grateful. "Thanks." He brushed past me, so close our shoulders almost touched. In that almost moment, I felt 3 years of distance collapse. "You're gonna understand what you owe me, Raphael. You'll see." He grabbed the mattress, set it up in the living room like he'd always belonged there, and made it his spot. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. I retreated to my room. Mateus was back, and he had no intention of letting me run. I could hear him out there, settling in for the night. The sounds of someone with nowhere else to be. I was terrified. Not that he'd stay, but that he'd discover the real truth. That dinner hadn't just sparked attraction in me. It was recognition. Like some part of me had been waiting for him. And now he expected me to be honest about everything I'd buried. "You'll understand what you owe me soon." His words echoed in my head. A promise. A threat. A prophecy. And in the hollow of my chest, where I kept all the secrets I'd never told anyone, something began to move. Something I had buried 3 years ago, and that now, with Mateus on the other side of the door, was starting to resurface. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know if I'd have the courage to be honest. I didn't know if I'd be able to face what he'd come for. But one thing I knew. My life would never be the same. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only certainty I needed. The certainty I had? It lasted exactly until the next morning. I woke to the smell of coffee. Mateus was making it at the counter like he owned the place. "Morning, Raphael. Did you sleep okay?" His tone was light. Too light. Like he wasn't sleeping in my living room. Like he hadn't just bulldozed back into my life with some revenge scheme I still didn't fully get. I should have thrown him out yesterday. Should have shut the door and pretended this wasn't happening. But I didn't. Because somewhere deep down, under all the walls I'd built, I wanted him to stay. So now I was dealing with the fallout. "Mateus, we need to talk." He laughed bitterly and slammed the mug down. "Talk? Now? Really?" All the pretense dropped. What was left was pure anger. 3 years. Raphael, 3 years. I spent 2 of them on the other side of the world sending you messages. Messages you didn't even read. Calling you. You never picked up. Remember when we promised to stay in touch? Yeah, I remember. The dinner. His leg brushing mine under the table. That look when we said goodbye. Good. Because I remember every message I sent. Waiting for you to say something back. He stepped forward. I stepped back without thinking. Automatic, self-preservation. But from what? From him? Or from myself? I was busy. Work. Everything. He laughed again, sharp, cold. Busy, right. Too busy to even say hi. Too busy to remember I existed. That's not fair. Then what is it, Raphael? Help me understand. Because I genuinely want to know how you go from saying we'll stay close to just erasing me like I never happened. I didn't erase you. You did. And we both know it. You know it. He crossed his arms, leaned back on the counter, looking at me in a way that made me feel naked, vulnerable, as if he could see exactly what I was trying to hide. And then he asked the question I'd spent 3 years avoiding. Have you ever had questions about who you are? About what you want? The question hung between us, I didn't mean to hurt you, Mateus. My voice came out small, raw. And it was true. I hadn't meant to. But I had done it anyway, and I knew exactly why. Mateus went silent. For a second I thought he'd explode, throw it all back in my face at once. But he didn't. He just stared at me. And I saw everything in that look, all the anger, all the hurt, all the disappointment, and something else too. Something I recognized because I'd been carrying it myself. You didn't want to hurt me, but you ghosted me for 2 whole years, Raphael. You understand what that does to someone. You know what it's like to send a message and wait, keep waiting, and get nothing? I know I was wrong. Wrong? You think that's what you were? Raphael, this wasn't a mistake. You made a choice. You actively chose to shut me out. And I need to know why. He moved closer. This time I held my ground. Not because I was brave, but because I knew if I ran now, I'd never get another shot at honesty. With him. With myself. So tell me, what did I do to you? Nothing. You didn't do anything. Then what was it? I was scared. The truth landed between us like a weight. Scared of what exactly? Of figuring out something about myself. Something that would change everything if I admitted it. The same words I'd been thinking. But saying them to him felt different. For the first time, I actually believed he might understand. He went quiet. Then, you weren't alone in feeling it. That night I felt it too. My heart literally stopped. It was real. It was never just me. Mateus, Wait, let me say this. You weren't the only one confused. The only one who didn't know what to do next. But I didn't run. I tried. I tried to stay connected. I tried to show you I cared. You disappeared. He was right. Absolutely right. And I had nothing. No defense, no excuse. Just the truth, raw and painful. I ran because I was drowning in it. Because everything happened too fast and scared me too much. Because being around you made me feel things I was supposed to ignore. The most terrifying and the most right thing at the same time. And I couldn't figure out how to handle it. Mateus closed his eyes, rubbed his face, let out a long breath. How many times do you think I was ready to just give up? To tell myself it wasn't worth the heartache, that you didn't care, that I needed to let you go? How many times? Every single one. Every day. But I couldn't do it. He looked directly at me, and I saw everything laid bare. The vulnerability underneath all the anger, the weight of his pain. And underneath it all, hope. Small, fragile, but there. How come you couldn't? Because I had to know. If what I felt that night was real. If you'd felt it too. If I was insane for spending 3 years thinking about you when you'd completely shut me out. You weren't insane. Then tell me, Raphael, what did you feel? Looking at you, I knew my whole life was about to change. I knew that if I got any closer, I'd have to admit things about myself I wasn't ready to face. I was terrified. Completely terrified. What about now? Now I'm still scared. But you're here, and I can't run anymore. The silence came back. But it was different now. Not that crushing weight of pain anymore. This was a silence full of possibility, of things we were finally about to say. Mateus stepped closer. Close enough that I felt the heat radiating off him. Close enough to see every line of his face, every feature I'd been trying so hard to unsee. You don't have to run anymore, Raphael. I want to believe that. Then believe. He reached up slowly, like he was about to touch my face, but he paused halfway, giving me an out, a chance to back away, to bolt. But I didn't move. This time I stayed, and when his hand finally touched my face, I felt something I'd been running from for 3 years, something impossible to keep buried any longer, like I'd finally come home. Mateus moved closer. So close our faces were inches apart. So close I could feel his breath. You want to know why I came back, Raphael? Not for revenge. I came because I had to know. If what I felt was real. If you felt it too. If there was anything left for us. And is there? His voice dropped low, raw with hope that nearly destroyed me. I don't know. But I want to find out. The second those words left my mouth, I knew we'd crossed a line. No going back from this. No pretending it never happened. Mateus smiled then, not a full smile. Small, exhausted, but real. Then let's figure it out together. He pulled his hand back from my face, stepped away, and grabbed his coffee mug from the counter. But first, you're going to tell me exactly what the hell you were thinking ghosting me for 2 years. Because I deserve the full story, Raphael. All of it. And I knew he was right. He deserved the truth. And for the first time in 3 years, I actually wanted to give it to him, to be completely honest. Even if it meant saying things I'd buried deep for so long. Even if it meant confronting every fear I'd been running from. Because Mateus was right. I had run. I had hidden. I'd picked safety over honesty. But standing there looking at him, waiting for answers I should have given years ago, something clicked. Running had never actually protected me. It had only left me isolated. So maybe it was time to finally stop running. Okay, I'll tell you everything. He waited, watching me. I took a breath, getting ready to finally unlock all the stuff I'd been holding inside. Then he said something that shifted everything. I've spent 3 years trying to figure out what that feeling meant, wondering if I'd made it all up in my head, but I didn't make it up. My whole understanding collapsed. Everything I'd been telling myself crumbled. I wasn't alone in this. It was never just me. And now I had to decide what came next. Mateus looked at me with an intensity that took my breath away. So what now, Raphael? What do we do? And I had no answer for that. Not yet. But I knew one thing for certain. There was no way back from this. Those words stayed between us like a ghost. You felt it too that night. I couldn't look at him. Couldn't let myself think about what that meant. If he'd been feeling it the whole time, then these past 3 years weren't about him not caring. It was both of us running from the exact same thing. Mateus stood up from the couch, ran his hand through his hair in frustration, and went over to the window. The summer heat was pressing against the glass, but it was nothing compared to the intensity burning in my chest. What do we do? I'd asked him. He didn't respond. Just stood there facing away, shoulders rigid like something inside him was tearing. I stood too, felt lost. Didn't know what to do with myself. Mateus, I started, but nothing came out. He spun around. I didn't come here for revenge. I came because I had to know. If I'd imagined that look at dinner, if it was real, or if I was just some lovesick guy obsessing over nothing. Lovesick. That word hit me like a punch. You didn't imagine it, I said, almost breathless. It was real. He stopped. His green eyes locked on mine. So then why'd you vanish? Because I was scared, I said. And that's when the weight of it really hit me. I was terrified of what I felt, of what it meant, of the family fallout, of my father, of your mom, of everything. Mateus laughed bitterly. You think I wasn't terrified? You think it was simple for me to realize I had feelings for the son of the guy my mom just married? That I looked at you that night and wanted you in ways I wasn't supposed to? He shook his head, his eyes going wet. I left the country, Raphael, went thousands of miles away thinking distance would solve it. That I'd forget about you. You know what actually happened? I couldn't say anything. I spent 2 years obsessing over you. Constantly asking myself if maybe you felt the same. If I should text. If I should call. And nothing came back. Nothing from you, Raphael. His voice cracked. And that's when I got it. This wasn't about revenge. It never was. It was about feeling rejected. About being alone in this. While I'm struggling on the other side of the world with the same feelings, you're here erasing me. I should have reached out to you, I said, voice shaking. I should have been honest. With you. With myself. Mateus wiped his face with his sleeve, trying to hide the tears. But you didn't, he said. And I was stuck there thinking I was the only one. That you'd moved on and forgotten about me. That I was pathetic for still wanting you. No way, I said, stepping toward him. You're not pathetic. I'm the one who was pathetic. He looked at me, and all that accumulated pain was right there on his face. I could feel it physically. So answer me this, Raphael. He came closer. Why'd you let me stay? Why didn't you tell me to get out when I showed up? Because I had to know too, I said. I had to know if I still felt the same things. And do you? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, opened them to find him closer. Yeah. Low and steady. Matthias just stared, processing, then a short, joyless laugh. This is insane, right? 3 years running from it and now we're just putting it all out there at once. Yeah, I agreed, trying to smile. We're completely terrible at this. At what? Honesty. He gave a half smile, but the sadness was still there. Then we need to figure it out. The quiet that followed was different. Not heavy this time. It was full-packed with everything we'd just admitted, like a ceasefire. But ceasefires don't last forever. Time moved slowly. We talked about other stuff, trying to break the tension. About where he'd been those 2 years. About his photography work. About my boring marketing job that I could barely explain. But that wasn't the real conversation happening. It was everything left unspoken. What we'd revealed. What we still didn't know how to process. When actual night hit, Matthias was stretched out on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through his phone. I started making coffee more, because I needed to do something with my hands than anything else. But my brain wouldn't stop. He'd come back. He'd put himself out there. And me. 3 years of running and hiding. Raphael? His voice snapped me back. I looked up. Mind if I go on the balcony? Go ahead. He headed out through the glass door. I stayed holding my hot cup. Part of me wanted to leave him alone, but something wouldn't let me. So I went out too. The São Paulo night was sticky and hot, even with the breeze from the street below. Matthias had his elbows on the railing, looking down at the city. The lights of the neighborhood glowed like tiny beacons. I stood next to him but kept some distance. Safe. Pretty good view, he said, eyes still on the city. Yeah. I love this time of night. When it finally gets quiet. He nodded, thoughtful. After a while, he spoke again. You know what's crazy? He turned to look at me. I've rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. What I'd say, how I'd make you face it, how I'd make you feel even half of what I've been feeling. He let out a bitter laugh. But now I'm actually here. I just feel wiped out. Exhausted from what? From carrying all of this alone. I completely understood. Same. He looked at me, eyes wide. Really? Because it seemed like you were doing fine. Like you'd just moved on. I shook my head. I never moved on, Matthias. I just buried everything. Pretended the whole thing never happened. Pretended you were just someone random. That dinner was nothing. And that actually worked for you? Not even close. We didn't speak for a minute, but the quiet felt different this time. Closer. Like finally we were actually on the same team. This scares you, doesn't it? He asked quietly. Yeah, I said. A lot. Because this isn't just about us, right? It's family. It's explaining it. It's everyone's reactions. Matthias nodded. I'm scared too. But you know what terrifies me more? He looked straight at me. Spending another 3 years pretending I feel nothing. Going back, and then 5-10 years down the line, realizing I never even tried. Those words hit me hard. Because he was right. I'd spent 3 years being terrified. And where did it get me? Here. Back to square one. Worse even. Because now I knew he felt the same way. And I'd wasted all that time. I can't keep running, I said, and my voice was firm. I don't want to spend the rest of my life pretending. Matthias turned toward me, leaning his elbow on the rail. His face was close enough to see everything. His eyes, his jawline, the small tattoo on his left arm. So what are you asking for? I didn't know what to say. The truth was complicated. Messy. But it came down to this. I wanted him. Wanted to actually know him. Wanted to understand what it felt like to be with someone who just got me like that. But everything that came with it scared the hell out of me. To be honest, I finally said, I want to try this, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. Mateus watched me for a moment. Then he slowly slid his hand across the railing until it was next to mine. My pulse picked up. I looked down. His hand was right there, just inches away. All I had to do was move. One small gesture. Just to know this was happening. That we could actually do this. I moved my hand. Instinct took over. Our fingers connected. And for 1 second, everything stopped. Then the fear rushed in. It was fast and brutal. And I pulled away. Mateus saw it happen. He didn't say anything, just watched me. Steady. Unwavering. Like he was waiting to see my next move. And I was frozen. I wanted it. Wanted to grab his hand and hold on. Wanted to be brave. But some part of me was locked in place. Mateus held my gaze for a few more seconds. Then, slowly, he turned back to the ledge, resting both arms and looking out over the city. But something had changed. Because he had seen. He had seen that I had almost touched him. That I had gotten close. And that I had pulled away. We stood there, silent, side by side on the balcony, while São Paulo breathed down below. And I couldn't stop thinking about that almost. About that touch that didn't happen. About that moment when I could have been brave, but chose fear. When we went back inside, Mateus said he was going to sleep. I nodded, said goodnight, and went to my room, thinking the hard part was over. I was wrong. But I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, replaying everything. Every word, every look, especially that moment on the balcony, when his hand was waiting, and I pulled away. Why couldn't I do that? I kept asking myself. Because terrified. Terrified this was actually happening. Terrified that touching him meant accepting all of it. That I'd have to admit feeling something forbidden. That we'd have to figure out this impossible, complicated future. But mostly because, for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't drowning alone. He was drowning too. That shifted everything. I grabbed my phone and opened the nightstand drawer. Inside was a photo I'd been hiding. One I'd secretly taken that night, 3 years ago. Mateus laughing at something my dad said, his face lit by the warm glow of the dining room. I'd never deleted it. Couldn't. Because somewhere inside, I always knew the truth. I'd never moved on. And with him asleep in the next room, I had to choose. Keep running, or finally face what was real. I looked at the photo one last time. Mateus laughing. That warm light on his face. Something I'd never forgotten. 3 years. 3 years holding this photo like it was something shameful. 3 years pretending he didn't matter. I left the room and found Mateus in the kitchen, making coffee. He had just woken up, hair messy, wearing an old t-shirt that hugged his shoulders in a way I had to force my eyes away from. "Sleep all right?" he asked, eyes on the coffee. "Not really." He poured the cups without speaking. The vibe between us had changed since the balcony. Less aggressive, but heavier somehow, because the anger was gone. Now there was just everything else. "Rafael," he said, finally turning to me. "I need to ask you something." My stomach tightened. "Ask." "So, why didn't you ever reach out?" He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "And don't tell me it was just because you were busy. I want the actual reason." I wrapped my hands around the cup, feeling the heat burn. Whatever I said next would sound like a lie. I was done lying anyway. Done running. "Because I was scared," I said quietly. "Scared of what?" I took a breath. "Of you." Mateus's expression shifted, confused. "Of me? Rafael? I never hurt you. I never... No, that's not it." I set the cup down before my hands gave me away. "I was terrified of what being near you made me feel." The silence hit like a wall. Mateus stood still. Those green eyes just watched me, the ones that always completely undid me. "Of what you felt," he repeated, slowly, like he was testing the words on his tongue. "Yeah." I forced the words out. "At that first dinner, when you walked into the room, I stopped. Trying to find a courage I'd never had before. I felt something I wasn't supposed to feel. And what was it? Attraction. The word hung in the air between us. Mateus said nothing. He kept looking at me, expression impossible to read. I know it's wrong, I went on, the words coming faster now, like I needed to get it all out before I lost my nerve. I know that our parents are married, that technically we're family now. I know all that, and that's exactly why I pulled away. Raphael. No, let me finish. I ran my hand through my hair, nervous. When you left abroad, I thought it would be easier, that with distance, it would pass. But it didn't. And when you messaged, when you asked if I was okay, I couldn't answer because every time I saw your name on the phone, everything came back. I laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. So I stopped replying, stopped looking, stopped thinking, or at least I tried. Mateus took a step toward me. And you think it was easy for me? I lifted my eyes to him, surprised. What? Do you think it was easy for me to see you at that dinner and feel what I felt? His voice was loaded with something I'd never heard before, something raw, vulnerable. Do you think I went abroad just for work? My heart raced. Mateus, I left because I didn't know what to do with what I was feeling for you. He took another step. Now we were less than a meter apart. And when I came back, I needed to know if you had felt the same. If I hadn't just imagined that look you gave me that night. I couldn't breathe properly. All that revenge stuff, I said slowly. It was a lie. He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. Or not. I don't know. I was hurt, yes. But it wasn't about you ignoring me. It was about you ignoring me when I thought that maybe you felt the same. My knees went weak. I felt it, I admitted, my voice coming out hoarse. I felt the same. Mateus closed his eyes for a second, as if trying to process. When he opened them again, the intensity in his gaze completely disarmed me. Then why did you stay silent? Because I thought it was only me. Because I thought it was wrong. Because I was afraid that if I admitted it, everything would crumble. And now? He took the last step that separated us. Now I could feel the warmth of his body. Do you still think it's wrong? I should have said yes. I should have stepped back. I should have put the wall back up between us. But I was tired of being afraid. I don't know what's right or wrong anymore, I said honestly. I only know that I never managed to forget you. Mateus exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath that whole time. Me neither. We stood there, frozen, so close I could see the tiny golden flecks in his green eyes. So close I could feel his breath against my skin. Neither of us moved. Neither of us knew what to do with this truth now that it was exposed. Raphael, Mateus said, his voice low. If we hadn't been, if our parents hadn't married, if we'd met some other way, He stopped, as if unsure how to finish the sentence. Would you let this happen? He finally asked. Would you allow yourself to want this? I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Because I didn't know. Or maybe I did and was too afraid to admit it. The truth was, we hadn't met any other way. The truth was there was a real complication between us. A complication that wouldn't disappear just because we admitted what we felt. But at the same time, looking into his eyes now, feeling the weight of this confession between us, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wanted it. I always had. And now that Mateus had confessed he felt the same, there was no going back. No pretending it didn't exist. I don't know if we should, I said at last, my voice coming out weak. But do you want to? I closed my eyes. Yes. When I opened them again, Mateus was looking at me in a way that made my chest tighten. Then we need to decide, he said, if we're going to keep pretending we feel nothing. Or if we're going to have the courage to be honest about it. And what if it's a mistake? And what if it's not? I had no answer for that. Mateus raised his hand slowly, as if giving me time to pull away, but I didn't. And when his fingers brushed my face lightly, I stopped breathing. I didn't come here to hurt you, he said soft. I came because I needed to know if I was alone in this. And now, I know I'm not. Mateus, you don't have to decide anything now. He lowered his hand but didn't step away. But I'm not going to pretend I don't feel this anymore. I've pretended for too long. I swallowed hard. And if this destroys everything? And if it saves it? His question hung in the air between us, heavy and impossible to ignore. Mateus stepped back, finally creating distance. But his gaze never left me. Think about it, he said. Because I'm not going to stay here forever, Raphael. At some point, I'll have to leave again. And when that happens, I need to know if you'll let me go, or if you'll have the courage to ask me to stay. He left the kitchen, leaving me alone with the cooling coffee and the weight of the truth we'd finally put out in the open. I leaned against the counter, trying to process everything that had just happened. Mateus felt the same. He'd always felt the same. And now that I knew that, there was no going back. The question left was simple, but terrifying. What was I going to do with that information? I could stay afraid. I could let him leave again, like I had 3 years ago. I could choose the safety of distance and spend the rest of my life wondering, what if? Or I could be brave. Brave enough to admit I wanted this, even knowing it was complicated. Brave enough to take the risk. Brave enough to be honest, not just with him, but with myself. I looked at the phone on the table. The screen was off, but I knew if I opened it, the photo would still be there. Mateus laughing. Mateus lit up. Mateus the way I'd always kept him in the back of my mind, even when I tried to forget. I had never been able to forget, and maybe it was time to stop trying. I picked up my phone and opened the bedside drawer where I always kept important things. Things I didn't want to lose. I put the phone in there, along with the photo. But this time I didn't close the drawer. I left it open, because I was tired of hiding. Tired of locking away what I felt like it was something shameful. Mateus was right. At some point, he was going to leave. And when that happened, I had to decide. Let go. Or have the courage to ask him to stay. I looked down the hallway where Mateus had disappeared. The apartment was quiet, but I could feel his presence. I could feel the shift in the air. The truth was exposed now, and there was no pretending it didn't exist. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the heart that was still racing. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't know what was going to happen. But for the first time in 3 years, I also wasn't running away. And maybe that was a start. But I had no idea the trial by fire would come when night fell. Night had been here for a while. São Paulo was down below, that chaotic mix of noise and light I always found comforting. But out on that balcony, it felt like the world had shrunk until there was only me and Mateus. He hadn't left after our conversation. He didn't slam the door, didn't throw in my face that I was a coward. He just stayed there, sitting in the wicker chair I never used, staring at the city as if he were searching for something he didn't even know. I was leaning on the railing, trying to gather the courage to say what needed to be said. Because there was one thing I still hadn't admitted out loud. Not to him, not to myself. And it was that very thing that had been stuck in my throat since that first night, 3 years ago, when our parents sat everyone down for dinner, and I looked at Mateus for the first time. I remember every detail of that night. His green shirt, the way he ran his hand through his hair when my stepmother introduced us. His green eyes finding mine and staying there. Too long to be just politeness. I remember thinking, no, this can't be happening. But it was, and I spent 3 whole years pretending it wasn't. Raphael. His voice pulled me out of my thoughts, deep, tired. It wasn't that challenging tone from when he first arrived. Now, there was something different. Something more. Real. Talk, I said, without turning to him. Are you still afraid? The question hit me hard. Not because I didn't expect it, but because the answer was too obvious. Of course I am, I answered. Afraid of everything. Of what this means. Of what people will think. Of what our parents will say. Afraid of ruining everything just because I don't know how to control what I feel. I heard the chair creak when he stood up, his steps getting closer. And then he was beside me, leaning on the railing too, so close I could feel the warmth of his body. What if we didn't have to control it? He asked quietly. I turned my face to him, and it was a mistake, because his eyes were fixed on me, with that intensity that always disarmed me. And there was something new there, something that seemed like hope. "It's not that simple," I said, but my voice came out weak, unconvincing. "Why not?" he insisted. "We're not kids, Raphael. We didn't do anything wrong. We just felt, I repeated, as if tasting the word aloud would help me understand its weight. Matthias gave a half smile. It wasn't happiness. It was recognition, as if he had finally been waiting to hear what needed to be heard. "Do you know when I realized?" he asked. "When?" "That night, at our parents' house. You avoided looking at me the whole dinner. And I thought it was because you didn't like me. But then, when we left, you looked at me in the hallway. It was only for a second, but I saw it." My stomach tightened. Saw what? The same thing I was feeling. I couldn't answer. Because he was right. And saying it out loud felt like crossing a line I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. "Why did you leave?" I asked, changing the subject. "To Europe. Why did you take that job?" He hesitated. Ran his hand through his hair, like he always did when he was nervous. "Because I needed distance," he admitted. "I thought if I stayed away long enough I'd stop thinking about you that way." "And did it stop?" "No." The answer came quick, without hesitation, and the way he looked at me when he said it made my heart race. "I tried, Raphael. I tried everything. I met people, went out, threw myself into work. But every time I saw a photo of São Paulo, every time someone spoke Portuguese, every time I woke up and remembered that you existed somewhere in the world, it was like nothing I did was enough to get you out of my head." I swallowed hard. His words were unraveling me from the inside. "And then you came back," I said. "And then I came back." "And you came here for what? To get revenge? To make me feel guilty?" He shook his head slowly. "I came because I needed to know." "Know what?" If I was crazy. If I had made it all up in my head. If what I felt that night was real. Or if it was just me. I closed my eyes. Because I knew exactly what he was talking about. And it was real. It always had been real. "Matthias, you don't have to say anything now," he interrupted. I just needed you to know." And in that moment, the sky fell, literally. I felt the first drop on my face, then another. And in less than 10 seconds, the summer rain São Paulo knows so well came down full blast, soaking everything. "Shit!" I shouted, trying to cover my head with my hands. Matthias laughed. A real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from him in years. "Come on!" he yelled, pulling my arm. We ran inside. I shut the glass door behind us, but it was already too late. We were completely soaked. The air conditioning was on, and suddenly, the cold hit me. But it wasn't just the room's cold. It was something else. It was his proximity. We stood there, in the middle of my living room, dripping water onto the floor, breathing fast. And the silence returned. But it was different from any silence that had ever existed between us. This silence wasn't uncomfortable. This silence was pure anticipation. I looked at him. At the wet shirt clinging to his body. At his messy hair. At the drops of water running down his face. And he looked at me the same way. "We should change clothes," I said, but I didn't move. "We should," he agreed, but he didn't move either. And then it happened. I don't know who made the first move. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. Maybe we moved at the same time, as if some invisible force had pulled us to the same spot. But suddenly he was closer, and I was closer. And the distance between us was so small I could see every detail of his face. His breath hitting my cheek. His green eyes fixed on mine. His chest rising and falling fast, nervous. I saw when he lowered his gaze to my lips, and it was as if all the air in the room had disappeared. "Raphael," he whispered. And I knew what was going to happen. I knew what he was going to do. And for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't thinking about running away. He leaned in. Just a little. Enough for me to feel that if I wanted to, I could close the distance. And I wanted to. God, how I wanted to. But at the last second, the moment before everything changed forever, I turned my face, and his lips brushed my cheek. I felt him freeze. And when I opened my eyes, what I saw shattered me inside. Matthias had stepped back, his hands trembling, his eyes wet, and the expression on his face was a raw, exposed pain that I could barely bear to look at. "Sorry," I said, my voice breaking. I can't." He shook his head, rubbing his hands over his face as if trying to erase what had just happened. "No," he said, voice shaking. "Sorry. I shouldn't have tried." "That's not it," I tried to explain. "It's not that I don't want to. It's that You're scared," he finished, bitter. "I know. You've said it." And then something inside him broke. I saw it happen. I saw the exact moment when all the defenses he had built since he arrived here collapsed at once. He stepped away, leaned against the wall, and slid down until he was sitting on the floor, his hands covering his face, his shoulders shaking. "Matthias! I came here," he began, voice muffled, "because I needed to know. I needed to know if I was the only one, if I had made all of this up in my head, if I was crazy for feeling what I feel for you." He lifted his face, and his eyes were red, wet, completely vulnerable. 2 years, Raphael. 2 whole years I stayed away hoping it would pass, hoping I'd wake up one day and stop thinking about you, that I'd meet someone and finally be able to move on. But it didn't happen. And do you know why? I couldn't speak. I could only look at him, feeling my heart break. Because I couldn't forget you. I couldn't forget that look in the hallway. I couldn't forget your voice. The way you laughed. The way you got nervous when someone complimented you. I kept all of that inside me like it was the only thing I had that was real. He wiped his face with the sleeve of his wet shirt. And then I came back, and I came here. And you confirmed I wasn't crazy. That you felt it too. And I thought maybe we could. His voice failed. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. "But you're right. It's way too complicated, way too wrong, and I can't force you into anything." I crouched in front of him, my hands shaking as much as his. "Matthias, look at me." He opened his eyes. "It's not wrong," I said with all the conviction I could muster. "What I feel for you was never wrong. I'm afraid of ruining everything. Of losing you. Of losing my family. Of not knowing how to handle it." "Then tell me what you want," he pleaded, voice low, desperate. "Because I can't keep living in this limbo. I need to know, Raphael. I need to know if there's any chance, or if I need to leave for good and try to forget you for real." He held my face with both hands, and his touch was warm, steady, real. "I won't pressure you," he continued. "I won't force you into anything, but I'm not leaving here without an answer, without knowing what you really want." His green eyes held me, and in them I saw everything I had tried to ignore for 3 whole years. I saw fear, I saw hope, I saw pain, I saw desire, and I saw love. "I'm not leaving until you're honest with me," he whispered. "Truly honest, about what you feel, about what you want." He slowly let go of my face, as if every second of contact hurt physically. "So think about it, Raphael, because the next time you speak, I will believe you. And if you say you don't want anything with me, I'll accept it, and I'll leave. Forever." He stood up, leaving me crouched on the living room floor, soaked, confused, terrified. And as he walked toward the guest room, I stayed there, listening to the sound of the rain outside. Because for the first time in my life, I had to make a choice. And this time, there was no running away. I don't know how long I stayed there, crouched on my own living room floor. The rain kept pounding against the windows like it was trying to tell me something. Or maybe it was just my heart, beating so loud I could feel it in my temples, my neck, my hands trembling as I hugged my knees to my chest. The guest room door had closed about 10 minutes ago. maybe 15. I had lost track of time. I only knew that every second that passed was one less second to make the choice Mateus had asked me to make. And for the first time in my life, I had nowhere to run. But before I tell you what I did, I need you to understand one thing, a painful truth about human nature. Have you ever noticed how we spend our whole lives running away from things we don't even really know? Like, you see a situation coming, feel that tightness in your chest, and the first thing you do is invent an excuse. Make up a reason. Build a wall so solid that even you can't see what's on the other side. That's what I did for 3 years. 3 years since that family dinner. 3 years since the moment Mateus came into my life and I felt something I'd never felt before. Something that scared me so much I spent the next 6 months avoiding looking at him directly. And when he finally left, when he grabbed that camera and went to work on the other side of the world, I breathed a sigh of relief. Because if he was far away, I didn't have to deal with it. But now he was on the other side of that door. And I had promised I'd think about it, that I'd decide, that I'd finally stop running. And the truth I didn't want to admit, was that I already knew the answer. I always knew. I got up from the floor, wiping my palms on my pants. My whole body ached, like I'd run a marathon. But it wasn't physical tiredness. It was that kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying a weight for years that you didn't even realize you were holding. I walked to the guest room door and stood there. Light slipped under the crack. Was he sleeping? Had he given up on me? I knocked softly. Silence. I knocked again. Come in. His voice was muffled, tired. I opened the door slowly. The room was dark, only the streetlight bleeding through the window, casting long shadows on the walls. Mateus was sitting on the edge of the bed, back to me, shoulders hunched, head down. He looked smaller like that, more fragile, as if all that confidence, all that certainty he'd shown in recent days had evaporated, and that was what broke me. Mateus, he didn't turn. If you're here to tell me you don't want anything with me, just say it already, okay? I can take it. I've endured worse. His voice was hoarse, too controlled, as if he were holding something enormous inside. I stepped further into the room. I came to tell you that you were right. He tilted his head slightly, but not enough for me to see his face. Right about what? About everything. I took a deep breath, trying to organize the words that had been stuck in my throat for 3 years. About me running away. About me staying silent. About being scared of what I feel. He finally turned, and even in the room's dim light, I could see his eyes shining. Not with anger, with hope. And that terrified me and relieved me at the same time. And what do you feel, Raphael? The simplest question in the world, the most impossible question in the world. But I had promised. To him. To myself. I feel like I haven't stopped thinking about you since that dinner. The words began to spill out, one after another, as if someone had opened a floodgate. I feel like every time I saw your name pop up in the family group, my heart would race. I feel like I spent 2 years pretending I wasn't waiting for you to come back. And I feel like when you showed up at my door, the first thing I thought wasn't, what is he doing here? But, how did he get even more handsome? Mateus stayed completely still, as if any movement would break the moment. I'm scared, Mateus. Very scared. Scared my family will find out. Scared of ruining everything. Scared that this is just a phase or confusion or whatever my head invents to make me back away. My voice faltered, but I didn't stop. But I feel something bigger than the fear. I feel that if I let you leave again, I'll spend the rest of my life asking myself, what if? He stood up from the bed slowly, as if testing whether I'd retreat. But I didn't step back. For the first time, I stayed. What if we try? He said, voice low, almost a whisper. What if we stop pretending we don't want this? What if we just let it happen? I laughed, but it was a nervous, awkward laugh. You're talking like it's easy. It's not easy. He took another step toward me. But it's not impossible either. We're not children, Raphael. We don't need anyone's approval. And honestly, I'm tired of living my life afraid of what others will think. He stopped a few inches from me, close enough for me to feel his heat, close enough to see every detail of his face lit by the dim streetlight. I didn't come here to get revenge on you, Raphael. I came because I needed to know if I was alone in this. Because if I had to carry it alone for the rest of my life, I don't know if I could bear it. His voice cracked on the last word, and that was what completely broke me. Because I knew exactly what that felt like. Carrying a feeling alone, pretending it doesn't exist, burying it so deep, you start to believe it's not real. You're not alone, I said. And for the first time, I believed my own words. You never were. He closed his eyes as if drinking in every syllable. When he opened them again, there were tears. Tears he didn't try to hide. Then kiss me. It wasn't a request. It was an offering, a total surrender. And I, who had spent 3 years building walls, 3 years running away, 3 years convincing myself this could never happen, I surrendered too. I kissed him, and it wasn't like in the movies. There was no dramatic soundtrack, no perfect cinematic cut. It was clumsy at first, his hands shaking when they cupped my face, his breath hitching against my mouth. It was real. It was imperfect. It was everything. When we finally broke apart, my forehead was resting against his, breaths ragged, heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. And now, I whispered. He let out a low laugh, still holding my face like I might disappear. Now we stopped running. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like fleeing. In the days that followed, we didn't fix everything. Because real life doesn't work that way. We didn't wake up the next day with all the answers. We didn't call our families and make a dramatic announcement. We didn't become a perfect couple overnight. But we started. We started talking for real. About what we wanted. About how we'd handle our families. About what coming out meant. Not just for everyone else, but for ourselves. And there were hard moments. Of course there were. Like when my father called and asked if Mateus was still over, and I froze completely, not knowing what to say. Or when his mother messaged asking when he'd be back at her place, and we realized we couldn't postpone certain conversations anymore. But there were good moments too. Moments when we simply existed. Having breakfast on the balcony. Working side by side. Him editing photos while I answered emails. Talking late into the night about things that didn't matter, just because we could. And every time I felt fear creeping back, every time my head tried to convince me this was a mistake, I remembered what he'd told me that night. We stopped running. Because in the end, that's what it was. Our whole lives we run from things that scare us. We avoid difficult conversations, complicated feelings, choices that could change everything. We prefer the safety of a lie to the risk of the truth. But the truth is, nothing is more exhausting than living a life that isn't yours. And I had lived like that for too long. So when the time came to have the conversation with our families, we had it. It wasn't easy. There were awkward silences. There were questions we didn't know how to answer. There were people who didn't understand. There were people who needed time. But there was support too, from places we didn't expect. And in the end, we survived. Because the truth, as frightening as it may be, frees more than it confines. Today, when I look back, I realize that rainy night was the turning point. Not because everything became perfect, but because it was the first time I chose truth over fear. And if there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and choosing to be honest anyway. Because in the end, we don't regret the things we do. We regret the things we didn't have the courage to do. So if you're out there reading this, hiding from some truth you know you need to face, I won't tell you it'll be easy. Because it won't. I won't tell you everyone will understand. Because they won't. But I'll tell you this. It's worth it. It's worth waking up in the morning and not having to pretend. It's worth looking in the mirror and recognizing who's looking back. It's worth living a life that's truly yours. And if you're lucky, you'll have someone like Mateus, who's here beside me now, editing photos. Every so often he smiles and asks if I'm writing about him. I say no. We both know that's a lie. But it's okay. Some lies only protect the most beautiful part of the truth, the part that's just ours. At 9,